Well, abuse doesn't just destroy the person being harmed. Sometimes it traps survivors in situations where they are forced to do things they never would have chosen to do on their own. So, in abusive relationships, control can be reached by terrifying levels where fear, manipulation, threats have survivors feeling like they never had a choice and had to comply. Today's question is about something survivors rarely talk about: the guilt that comes from being coerced into hurting someone else while trying to survive abuse. This is Survivor to Survivor.
Survivor to survivor, break the silence. In the depths of silence, a voice emerges. A voice that says, "You are not alone." Welcome to Survivor, where strength rises through shared stories, where pain transforms into resilience, where survivors connect and empower each other. Your story matters. Your voice matters. You matter. Join the movement. Subscribe now. Welcome to Survivor.
Well, welcome back. I got an email. The subject was, I feel like I'm a terrible person for what I did. So it says, "Hi, Tara. This is something I've never told anyone because I am ashamed of it. When I was with my ex, he was extremely controlling and violent. He monitored everything I did, isolated me from friends, and would explode if I didn't obey him. One night he accused me of flirting with a coworker. I wasn't, but he wouldn't listen. He demanded that I call the coworker on speakerphone and tell him off. I didn't want to, but I stood there and he was watching me and he was furious. I was terrified of what he would do if I refused. So I did it. I called this innocent man and screamed horrible things at him while my ex stood there smiling. I've replayed that moment 1,000 times in my head. That coworker never did anything wrong, and I humiliated him because I was scared. I left the relationships months later, but that memory still haunts me. Am I just as bad as my abuser for doing that? And they signed it ashamed. Okay. So, first off, in my response, I definitely want you to hear me clearly. What happened to you is called coercion. Abusers often force their partners to do things that violate their own moral code and values and their character. It's another layer of control. It's another way of making you feel trapped and shamed. If they can make you feel guilty, they gain more power. Yet there's a difference between choosing to harm someone and being manipulated or even threatened into compliance while trying to survive the violence. So, your abuser didn't just control your actions, he weaponized your fear. Survivors in abusive relationships are often forced into impossible situations, from being pressured to lie to family members, being confronted or threatened by other people, being forced to defend the abuser publicly, or being pushed into legal or even other humiliating situations. Abusers do this intentionally. It isolates survivors and it creates shame that keeps them silent. The fact that you feel remorse shows something important about you. You have a conscience and it's intact. You didn't enjoy that moment and you're not proud of it, obviously. You were just trying to survive a very volatile, dangerous situation. Survivors often look back on things they did under duress and think to themselves, why didn't I just refuse? We've all felt that way. But people outside the abuse don't understand the constant fear survivors live with, the calculation that keeps happening in their minds every second, how to prevent the next explosion. You weren't the one creating the harm in this situation. Your abuser was. And if that coworker could see the full picture of what was happening behind the phone call, I suspect they would understand far more than you think. The real responsibility belongs to the person who created that fear and that threat and tried to control you in that manner, not the person who was trying to survive it. Many survivors carry guilty for things they were pressured into and forced into during their abuse. And if you struggled with shame over something you did while you were trying to survive the abuse, what helped you begin to forgive? Tell us in the comments. Your words could help someone else here release the weight of what they're carrying so they know they're not alone. And please share and like and subscribe to Survivor to Survivor. Survivor to Survivor is built on questions from people who are navigating abuse and healing. If you'd like to submit your question for an upcoming episode, email us at podcast@breakthesilencedv.org. Your name will remain anonymous. Also, programs like Survivor to Survivor exist because people choose to support survivors in practical ways. You can help us continue this work through Walmart's Spark Good program by rounding up your dollars when you buy from Walmart. So visit www.walmart.com/sparkgood. Search for Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence as your nonprofit of choice and round up your purchase to support survivors. Small actions create real impact. And we'll see you next time.